Steve Gardner, always good to kind enough to join us for a couple moments. Covers baseball for USA Today. How you been, pal? How you feeling?
I'm doing good, Rich.
You got your best stuff?
Little stint on the DL last week, but I think I was having the same sort of symptoms that some of the players in the Red Sox clubhouse and the White Sox clubhouse had. It's one of those things, I guess, as spring gets here.
Well, let's start with the Phillies and talk about going to the shelf. Right away, they demote Morgan, which I don't think was a surprise. And then you had the issue with Buck Holtz, who was off. You know, look at his career. It's injury-prone. But, listen, I think going into the season, the expectation was, let's see what the starting rotation can do. Young infield. They give up 14 last night. The Mets bats come alive with 7 home runs. I mean, if you look at the Phillies going forward, you know, sell me on a player or two that you can be hopeful for. You know, you want to go to the ballpark and watch some of these guys play.
Yeah, I think Odubel Herrera is probably the guy that right now you want to go see because he can do a lot of different things. You know, he can run, he can hit for some power, he can cause some havoc out there and play some decent defense. So I think right now he's the guy that you want to see. But really, it's the young players that are coming up through the minor league systems. You know, the J.P. Crawfords and the Roman Quinns, who I think will see the majors very soon, and will provide that kind of, you know, flashy, exciting play, do some things that maybe you don't see anybody on the roster right now doing. And I think that's where the excitement for the Phillies, and you get Vince Velasquez, another guy, you know, his stuff is fantastic. And the times that I've seen him pitch, he's been very good. And it's just a matter of being, you know, adapting to the major leagues, understanding what major league hitters are trying to do, and then going after their weaknesses with your, you know, things that you do really well, and he does a lot of stuff well, I have to say.
And listen, their infield is young. I mean, this is not the 81 Dodgers in their infield, but Josh pointed out the other day, they have yet, I believe the infield has yet to make an error. I don't think the Phillies have had an error all season long. So, again, defensively, sound early on. Look, last night you run up against a buzzsaw. We talked about Cespedes in spring training, the way he was hitting. You knew he was poised for a monster season. He hits 3 last night. And let me ask you something. Do you think with Collins and the Mets, is there going to be a time early on where we see less of Granderson as an everyday player?
I don't know. I mean, maybe against the left-handed hitter or left-handed pitchers, that's possible. But I mean, you've got he and Bruce are both left-handed. Michael Conforto, you know, if they're going to put somebody else in the outfield, he's a left-handed hitter. So, I mean, maybe just for maintenance purposes. He's an older player, obviously, and one of the oldest on the roster. So, yeah, a few times off, but he's still pretty solid. So it would surprise me. I mean, who else do they have to hit leadoff? He's done a pretty decent job doing that. Off to a slow start, sure, this season.
Always, though. He's always April, May. He's always notoriously.
Yeah, it seems that way.
But I would want to see, if I was a Met fan, I want to see Conforto get more at-bats because I just think the talent is there, and I just think he needs more at-bats. That's just me. And I don't know. I obviously would take away from Granderson at center because you have Bruce in right and you have Cespedes in left. But I just think Collins should really look at Conforto and figure out a way to get him some more at-bats.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that has been the issue with him. How do they fit him in? Who sits? You know, is Jay Bruce going to play first base ever? You know, that might ease some of the log jam, but Lucas Duda's off to a darn good start. You know, he went yard a couple of times last night as well. So who do you end up benching? That's the question. So unless there's an injury or something like that, it's hard to see Conforto getting the kind of at bats that he needs to be a better player. And you know, I think his ceiling is relatively high, but he's not making anybody sit right now, and if he's going to be there on the major league roster, he's going to have to kind of accept that role as the fourth outfielder.
And you know the pitching is going to be there. Harvey left the game last night with a hamstring cramp, but he's expected to make his next start on Sunday against the Marlins. You got DeGrom, you got Syndergaard. I mean, Harvey's no longer, he's not the ace of that staff. And again, give credit to Josh. He pointed this out the other day. He goes, maybe that's the best thing for him. You know, you try to get healthy for a full season, pressure and the limelight's off you. You just go out there and you just wheel and deal.
Oh, sure. And I think the expectations were not terribly high, you know, coming off the thoracic outlet syndrome and everything that slowed him down last season. it's almost like anything that he gives you is a bonus. and with Noah Syndergaard pitching as well as he is, Jacob deGrom had a really strong spring. I think the question with the Mets is, and as Harvey gives them anything out of that number 3 spot, what's the rest of the rotation going to be? And it looked like they had a lot of depth coming into the spring, but now, Steven Matz is hurt. Who knows when he's going to be back? Zach Wheeler on an innings limit, so he's not going to be there down the stretch. And, Lugo was hurt. This has become one of those where I think the Mets are actually going out and testing the waters to see if there are some starting pitching, possibilities out there that they can trade for, which, if you'd said that the last week of spring training, you said, gee, that's a little bit of overkill. But right now, yeah, they're a little bit have to be a little bit concerned about the pitching depth.
Was it bizarre? Was it bizarre to you that the Phillies decided a week in the season that they're basically going to demote Gomez? He's no longer going to be the reliever.
No, I think from a skill standpoint, he's just not the kind of guy that you can rely on. And they were able to get 5 months, essentially 5 months of closer-worthy status out of him last season until he started melting down in September. And I think, this season we see who Janmar Gomez is. And if you take his entire career up to the point last year when he started closing, he was a middling reliever and really had not shown any skills or any aptitude. So, yeah, I think that they went out, got Joaquin Benoit this offseason to bolster the bullpen, knowing that he has closed before. And I think the fact that, Hector Neris is probably their best reliever in that bullpen, but he's also younger, he's inexpensive, and you don't really want him necessarily, especially if you're not a contending team at this point.
Right.
I don't know that you necessarily want him to get all those saves because, as we saw with Dylan Betances in arbitration, they're going to look at not your value to the team, but how many saves
Stats.
you got to determine how you get paid.
That's a great point. Joaquin, you mentioned too in the offseason signed to really be that 8th inning guy, and then you mentioned Neris and Gomez coming out of the pen, and now you've got Gomez demoted. And I also look, his ERA jumped. You mentioned he imploded the last month or so of the season. It went from like 2.52 to 4.8, and I guess early on in the season, you're right. You don't want to go down that path. Speaking of kind of a bad path early on in the season, overall assessment of the Pirates. Year in and year out, I know they're only 3-4. We're 7 games in. We've talked about this over the last several years. The problem with them is they can't never win the division, and you're stuck playing in that one-game wild card. If you win the Central, we're not talking about it. They always go up against hot pitching. But do you see the Pirates having a down year? Are they going to struggle this year?
I think they already are to some degree. I mean, you've got the uncertainty. Really hurt them. What really hurt them is Jung Ho Gong's legal status and all of that. Not being able to get a work visa from South Korea because of the DUIs and all of that. We still don't know when he may be available to them. So once you take him out of the lineup, a big bat in the middle of that lineup, then you've got to move David Freese into third base, and you can't have him filling in off and on. I think, it's a difficult thing for the Pirates, and because of the division, the Cardinals have struggled some to start the season, so at least from a Pirates standpoint, that's something that you can at least feel a little bit positive about. But this team, they've got to have pitching. They've got to have, Garrett Cole be an ace. They've got to have Jamison Taillon be a 2, and they've got to get the guys further down in that rotation, like a Tyler Glasnow, to come up and take that next step. And so far, Glasnow has run into the same sorts of things that he had when he was called up last year, just bouts of poor control and not being able to get batters out and walking them so much. So I think that's one of the things. This is a Pirates team kind of in transition. And we were talking, remember, during spring training where there was a discussion about Andrew McCutchen possibly being traded. I think that kind of shows where the Pirates are. They're kind of in limbo still. Is this a team that needs to be all in, or is it a team that should start, looking toward the future because other teams in the division have already started doing that to various degrees, and you've got to pick, what you're going to do. And right now the Pirates seem, in that state of limbo.
Two of the teams that I thought would be better this year, I thought Colorado would be. I thought Arizona would win some games. I didn't think they'd get off to the start that they have, 7-2. And I don't know if this is more of an aberration or you look at some of their players, you look at their lineup from top to bottom. I know Jake Land is having a great start to the season already with 10 hits and 10 ribbies. What say you about the Diamondbacks? 7-2, 9 games into the season. Is this a team that, again, we are a week or so in, but if you're a Diamondbacks fan, cautious optimism or just a good start?
I think they deserve some optimism. I mean, this is a team that was probably worse than it should have been last season. You get injuries, to A.J. Pollock. That takes a huge player out of your lineup for the majority of the entire season. He's back now and playing well. You got Paul Goldschmidt, kind of had a down season last year, even though the numbers were good for any mere mortal. But he could be better. I think that the changes the Diamondbacks made in terms of the front office, new manager there and everything, and kind of went from, I think, one of the more laughing-stock front offices under Dave Stewart and everybody that was there, and kind of revitalized that, changed it, got Mike Hazen, the GM from the Red Sox organization, a very analytically friendly, and kind of changed the culture there. Brought in guys like a Chris Iannetta, kind of a below-the-radar signing, but the fact that he is one of the better catchers in pitch framing is something that, the teams that are a little bit more analytically minded are looking at making improvement like that. So I think the Diamondbacks are a team that is definitely primed, maybe not, to go out and win 7 out of 9, but the things that they've done, their run differential is one of the best in all of Major League Baseball so far.
Yeah.
And so I think that's a reflection of what they've done. Colorado, I'm not sure that they're along those same lines, and they've had some injuries early, overcome those. I think with the Rockies, this is just one of those instances of a little bit of a hot streak to start the season, but I'm not buying into them as much as maybe I'm buying into the Diamondbacks.
Yeah, and it's funny. Colorado, -3 run differential. Arizona, +17. And also the Dodgers as well, and they're playing 500 ball. Real quick, let me get caught up to speed on a couple things. Tampa Bay over the Yanks, 2-0, bottom of the second. Minnesota over Detroit, 1-0, middle of the second. Steve Gardner, USA Today, great baseball writer, kind enough to join us for a couple moments. Last one before I let you get out of here. We'll save the AL for next week because you're right, it's going to be a long year for the Yankees. And Sanchez loss is not good, but and Pineda just drives you crazy. But I digress. So Pete Rose, right? And I keep going. Pete Rose is going to get inducted into the Phillies Wall of Fame, and we were talking about that 80 team, and everyone still thinks, okay, yeah, he was the catalyst, but you had some pretty darn good players surrounding him. I know we've had this discussion over the years, and we talked about it the other day on the air and got some good dialogue and debates going with this. Is there ever going to be a time where in his lifetime, in Pete Rose's lifetime, that he will get fully reinstated to baseball? Or do you think it's going to happen when he leaves this earth?
That's a great question, and I don't see any way that he will be reinstated, given the current climate and everything else. The current commissioner certainly feels maybe even stronger than Bud Selig did about Pete Rose being on that banned list and not being able to be back into the game. It seems like there's a lot of the cultural forgiveness, though, with guys who may have used steroids or anything like that. It seems like those guys are getting more of a pass or being allowed to get back into the good graces because the waters were murky. I think the thing with Pete Rose is that there has always been that line of you do not gamble on games, you do not let any of that get into the clubhouse, and I think that's still something that the current baseball administration and the folks who are in power hold sacred to some degree. And so I think for that reason, I think it doesn't matter what the public thinks about Pete Rose and whether everybody likes him or wants to see him. I think it's still just the fact that baseball as an industry and an establishment is not going to tolerate what he did and will not let him in no matter how long it takes. I don't think Pete Rose is going to see the day where he gets back into and is allowed into baseball.
So then let me counter with this as we close it out. And I've had writers like yourself on for years. You know that. You've been coming on the airways with me for, God knows, probably close to a decade now. So
yep.
And we have this argument all the time. So you guys, and I'm not lumping you into the equation, but writers will vote for MVPs and Cy Young Award winners. And MVPs who probably, when it's all said and done, some of them that have been voted on, we know they've taken juice. But yet, they're going to vote them in or not vote them in the Hall of Fame for taking steroids. And yet you have a guy who's the career's hits leader, and I understand exactly what he did. And they're still not even going to give him a glimmer of hope, a glimmer, like a little bit of sunlight. It just seems to me, and again, this is not you, Steve, but it seems there's a contradiction sometimes when you talk with those in the media, where if you're not going to vote someone in the Hall of Fame who took steroids, but yet you're going to give them a regular season award, or vice versa. I just feel
here's the difference, though. I'll tell you, here's the difference, is that Major League Baseball and the Hall of Fame determined the eligibility for players being on the Hall of Fame ballot. So Pete Rose is not even an option for the Baseball Writers Association when it comes time to vote for the Hall.
Because he's technically
Everybody's
banned.
on the table, though. Yep. And that's Major League Baseball and the Hall of Fame that's doing that. I think, if you put Pete Rose on the Hall of Fame ballot and you let the Baseball Writers Association vote on whether he should be in the Hall of Fame, I don't know if I would say he would get 75%, but I think he'd get a majority of votes from the baseball writers to say yes, that he should be, and that, if he were to go into the Hall of Fame, that there would have to be something on his plaque to say, all the good, yes, but put the bad on there as well.
See, I hate that notion, because then I would turn around with some of these guys that are going to get in that took steroids. You're going to put little asterisks on them. Now, wait, I'm real quick, because I'm enjoying this, and I can appreciate the banner. So go back to what you just said as far as with the reinstatement. So then and I'm trying to think of the wording on this one. I lost my train of thought on this. So when you go back and you look at a guy in Pete Rose, I believe that there's old school writers that covered baseball that still have votes when it comes to the Hall of Fame and have a lot of cachet in the sport, that because Rose lied for so long, it ultimately it hurts writers' credibility, and it made him look like a fool. And I'm just wondering, do you buy into that notion at all, where even if he was fully reinstated, there would still be that agenda against him? Because, look, we were trying to get you to come forward for years now, and you kept saying, no, no, no. We were writing stories. We were protecting you. We were going to bat for you. And it turns out you were lying the whole time.
No, I think you're right about that, especially for the long time, people who have covered this game. It's same sort of thing I think you see in politics, where, you've covered a guy or a person, a politician, that has repeatedly told you something that was not the truth, or Lance Armstrong, another thing, has constantly lied to you, and then once the truth does come out and you've looked silly because of you've taken that person's word for it. Yeah, I think there's going to be some grudges that are going to be held. So yeah, it would not surprise me. I think that's human nature, and it's hard to distance yourself from what you've experienced over certainly a long career of doing what you're doing, and people that have maybe done you wrong to some degree. I can't see how that wouldn't be, a factor in what somebody feels.
More alarming. Wait a second. Politicians that lie? Come on, Steve.
Yeah, we're going down a completely
you're taking me down the foxhole. All right, my friend. Listen, always great stuff. We'll talk next week. Feel better. Always appreciate good dialogue and good debate. Always appreciate it, my friend.
Thanks, Rich. We've opened up a lot of stuff.
Yeah, we always do that. I appreciate it, pal. Be well.
Take care.
All right, you got it. Steve Gardner from USA Today. Follow him on Twitter. He's a great follow on Twitter, Steve A. Gardner.